Okay. Right, here we are again. So welcome back. I know last week we did standing poses. We're still going to do more of them this week just to kind of catch up with the other classes. But it won't be the same class. We'll be doing different things. So we're just going to start out sitting and just getting more centered. So letting our brains kind of catch up with where we are and what we're doing. So just take some time to arrange yourself on your chair so that you're using your own spine for support. You're not leaning against the back of the chair. You're finding your way over your sitting bones. You might move some flesh out from underneath your sitting bones. You're going to place your heels right underneath the line of your knees. Your knees are as wide as your hips. Your toes should be right in front of your heels. And then your hands can be anywhere on your thighs. I usually move them closer to my torso so that my shoulders move back, so that my shoulders are in line with my hips. And then from there, taking a moment to adjust your skull. Oftentimes our heads are kind of a little bit more forward than where we want them. So moving your head gently back. One way to think about this is to move from your chin toward the base of the skull, kind of lengthening up toward the occipital bun here. Can be a nice way to adjust the head back. We don't want to overcorrect and then come into a different sort of misalignment. Once you have all those pieces in place, then let your eyes close softly. And with your eyes closed, just looking away from your brain toward your cheeks, toward your heart. Releasing any effort or tension in your shoulders. And with all these alignment points that you just kind of checked off, you might sense your spine starting to grow taller with every inhale. If you imagine each kind of set of vertebrae moving up the spine, every time you breathe in, maybe imagining a small balloon filling between each set of vertebrae. Softening your belly. And sensing into your body. So the body has a lot to say. Oftentimes we're not quite listening. So letting this practice really be about tuning in to the radio station of your body, kind of feeling where the cranky or crabby parts are this morning. There might be parts that are neutral. There might be parts that are feeling quite well. And a big part of this practice is just developing the awareness of the body, also becoming more sensitive to detecting sensation in the body. And let's join our hands together in front of our hearts. And on an exhale, just lowering your chin toward your chest, bowing toward your own heart, your own inner teacher. And then when you're ready, lifting your head and letting your eyes gently come open. And welcome. I pulled my strap up, but I realized I actually changed what I wanted to do. So we're not using the strap right away. We're going to do the 6 actions of the spine from the chair like we normally do to wake up the spine. But we're going to try to attempt to grab our elbows. So those of you that don't have, if this is uncomfortable or not accessible, you can grab your strap and you can widen the hand position. You can also lower the hands. So make sure you're modifying if you need to. But if you're grabbing your elbows, we're just going to start to flex and extend the spine. So this is the arching of the back and the rounding. So on an inhale, just taking your elbows back, you can kind of press your elbows into your hands to create a little more resistance. Take your eyes slightly up. And then on an exhale, pushing the elbows forward, bringing the belly in, curling the chin in toward the chest. Inhale, opening back up. Feel your shoulder blades gently pushing forward toward your chest. And make sure you're moving with the breath. So it might be not in rhythm with my cueing. You might have a different rhythm to your breathing. So just pay attention to that. You're moving on inhale into that opening, heart opening back bend. And on exhale, lengthening the back body with a forward bend. When you go into that forward bend, it's almost like you can imagine your forehead kind of moving toward the tailbone, like they're coming toward each other, just to kind of deepen that lengthening stretch for your spine. And for the back of the head toward the back of the tailbone when you go into the arch. Let's just do it once more here. And next time you come up and out of a forward bend, you can release your arms. Good. So we're going to break that up because we're taking our arms up again in a moment, but let's give them a rest now. So we'll do our twist. And you're going to turn 90 degrees on your chair so that you can work on the back of the chair, the higher part of the chair, for a twist. This is a great tool when we twist because with one hand you can push and the other you're going to pull, so that you're starting to encourage a deeper rotation in your spine. So you might have, like I do, you might have one leg not fully on the chair. That's okay. This isn't really about our legs. So just make sure you have enough of a purchase on your seat that you're not going to go anywhere. And you'll start to turn toward the back of the chair and just start to sense how the hands, one pushes, one kind of pulls toward you or presses towards you to help you turn your chest more squarely to the back of the chair. And when we twist deeply, we kind of want to engage the lower abdominals. Kind of imagine your lower abdominals like particle board moving in every which way, kind of around the spine or toward the midline, just to stabilize you. And that will send mobility up the spine. It will help you move the chest toward the back of the chair. It'll help you get those armpits kind of in a more clear, open placement. And it also keeps the sacrum and the ilium and the sacroiliac joint more stabilized. And go ahead and you're gonna release your twist on an in-breath and just do a 180 on your seat so that you're gonna be able to access the chair from the other side. And go ahead and find your hands on each side of the back of the chair and start to just kind of grip those lower abdominals. You might even imagine your hip bones squeezing together a little bit. And then start to feel the rib cage moving. You might not feel it, but imagine it. We can all do that. And the rib cage really follows the primary action coming from your spine. So the twist of the spine lends itself to the rib cage coming along. You're going to feel the kind of the outer ribs coming toward the chair, the other side moving away from the chair. Just a couple more breaths here. And again, lifting through the top of the head, come out on an inhale to keep your spine really lengthened out like you've gotten it thus far. And you can come around to facing forward with the back of the chair behind you. And we'll go back to grabbing the elbows. So hopefully the arms have rested enough. You might just challenge a little habit in your body and switch the top crossing forearm. We all have little habits in our bodies, and part of yoga is unconditioning ourselves out of these habits. So you're going to do your lateral movement now. We're going to tip the left elbow down, the right elbow up, and we're going to think about the sides of the torso remaining lengthened. Obviously, they're not going to be equal with length, but what we don't want to do is just kind of crash down on that left side body. So again, think about that idea of a small balloon inflating, but this time between your side ribs on the left side body, where the intercostal muscles live, just kind of spreading some space between the side ribs. Meanwhile, the right side body is getting a nice lengthened out opening experience. On an inhale, come back to center, and then exhale, dipping the right elbow down, the left elbow up, and that same work of restoring a sense of spaciousness now to your right side body. And of course, you remember hopefully to do your best to keep your sitting bones balanced with their weight, bringing extra weight back to the lighter left sitting bone here. 2 more big breaths, stretching those intercostals, making them more elastic. And then the next time you breathe in, that will bring you back up to level forearms. You can release your arms down. Beautiful. And we're going to move up to some standing warm-ups now. So feel free to come up to standing, and we're going to face the seat of the chair. So you can position your chair so that all 4 feet are on your mat. We don't want the chair going anywhere. And looks like I have somewhat of a head, but I'm going to give myself more of a head here, sliding my camera back. And we're going to start with cat-cow action for the spine. So you can just put your wrists right underneath your shoulders and your heels right underneath your hips. And your feet are going to be as wide as your chair legs. Your toes are pointing toward the chair legs. And on an exhale, you're going to bend your knees and just look for your belly button, look for your navel, curl your chin in. Inhale, straighten your legs a little bit and look forward over the top of the chair and arch your back. And so you're just going to explore your range of motion here. You're going to move with your breath. The exhale again is going into that rounded spine, the chin hugging the chest, and then the inhale, work on straightening the legs, arching the back, and looking forward so that our back bend goes right up to the base of the skull. We don't want to leave the neck out. And just a few more, just noticing if range of motion starts to increase. Maybe it doesn't, so there's no wrong answers in yoga. What's important is that you're asking questions and you're noticing what's happening in your body. We don't really get to pick what the outcomes are. We're just really curious, inquisitive, and try to remain unattached with those outcomes. Just a couple more. I know I said that already, but it's feeling like we're making a little progress here, at least in my body. So just doing one more. And then the next time you're either on that cat side or the cow side, you can come back to just a neutral spine. And reminder here, if you have issues with wrist flexion due to arthritis or other issues, you can always be on your fists, keeping the wrists in a neutral position. You don't have to do flexion. And now we're going to come into kidney squeeze, so more lateral movement. So sometimes the image I like to provide here is you're washing a window with your butt. So you're just going to wave your hips from side to side, and you're exploring space in this lateral way. Your spine, of course, is moving in that crescent moon shape. And you might choose to do this kind of coordinating it with breathing. You might do it faster than that. You might do it slower than that. You might find that one side is especially tense and you're just going to hang out over there and breathe. So it's really your practice to explore how this movement would serve you best. I know for most of us, we have a lot of glued up tissue, surface tissue, fascia, connective tissue in the buttocks region. So in the outer hips and the big gluteus maximus muscles, we all have a lot of tension patterns that live there. So I know for most of us, this one can feel pretty good. Let's just do a couple more sweeps to each side. And then the next time you circle through center, you can hang out right at the center. And we're gonna walk ourselves back so that we're gonna get into a chair version of downward dog. So you're walking yourself back. We do wanna keep our legs upright, but what we're attempting to do is get our torso as lengthened out as we can into a diagonal position, so that eventually you'll arrive to kind of a stopping point in your body where you've met your physical edge, you can't go any farther, and you're just gonna hang out there, let your head fall or start to float through the space between the arms. You don't have to hold your head up. And try to really lengthen your hips away from your wrists. We are against gravity here. The belly might be sagging, so scoop the belly back to equalize that. So we're not just collapsing into the front body. Use your breath. Deeper breaths probably want to flow through here. So let your breaths be deeper, bolder, maybe even louder, maybe even faster. You're going to begin to come forward again toward the chair. So just move your weight into your hands a little more and start to step your feet closer. And we'll do a standing chair forward bend here. So you're going to let your forearms come down to the seat of the chair. You can be palms up. I find that a little more suggestive to my shoulders to be relaxed and surrendered. And I'm going to let my head hang. For some of us, your head might touch the chair, touch your hands. So make sure you're not blocking your head from going farther. Like if your arms are in the way, try to make room for your head. We want to continue to feel like we can lengthen through the top of the head here. So make sure you're not preventing that somehow. And again, your legs should be straight, but you might still need to bend your knee. So you're just working toward a straighter leg, which might not mean that you are completely straight or extended. So thinking about the legs moving up and then the torso cascading down. So your body is in one wave of motion. We're rising through the legs and then we're just letting the trunk cascade toward the floor. We're giving the spine a break from gravity. Gravity usually works against the spine in the opposite direction. So the spine really loves this break from gravity. And your skull, if you can tap into the weight of the head being suspended, the skull is heavy and it can help support the spine continuing to decompress. You're going to start to come up slowly. So lift your head, place your hands, use your stomach muscles to bring your spine back upright, to bring your whole body upright. And then we're going to step into mountain pose, but I want you to use the chair behind you. The back of the chair is going to face the back of you. And I want the chair to be far enough away from you that your hands have to move back, kind of at an angle. I'll turn sideways here, back. I don't want your chair right under your fingertips. I want you to have to reach back for it. So my chair is about 6 inches from my buttocks. So get it as far away from you as you can, but you can still grab it. And you're just going to leave your fingertips there. Your palms are facing toward your body. Your feet can be hip distance wide. And keeping the arms back here, I'm going to turn my setup sideways so you can kind of see what I'm trying to ask you to do. You're going to move your tailbone in. Your shoulders eventually have to cooperate and start to externally rotating, meaning you're kind of turning the shoulders from the front of the shoulder to the back of the shoulder. And then once you have that, you can let your hands come right underneath your shoulders, but hopefully we preserve some of those good actions that came from reaching back. Your head is perfectly floating above your spine. For most of us, that means a little bit of an invitation of the face to the back of the skull. You might be able to close your eyes. You might have to keep your eyes gently open, but just try to pull your attention inside so that you're not gazing out at something, some object in the room and distracted. So we're trying to introvert our attention in yoga. So we're turning it inward, even though constantly our attention's being pulled outwards. And just taking a couple moments to recenter yourself now that you're standing. Forming a connection with the floor through the feet. We don't want to sense that we stop and the floor begins. We want to sense that we continue down below the feet, just like a tree has this whole root system, usually similar mirror image to its own canopy. So just treating yourself like a mirror image under the feet. See if you can visualize that. And then similarly, lifting up through the top of the head, sensing that you don't stop there, that you continue lifting and lengthening up toward the ceiling. And just gently let your eyes blink open if you were closed, and just shake your limbs out. Make sure your limbs feel refreshed, that you don't feel like stagnant or tired. Shake out your legs if you need to. And we're going to work a little bit with the seat of the chair. And you can have, if you have a mat, hopefully you do, we want to be facing the seat of the chair, and we want to be facing the short end of the mat. So we want the chair kind of toward the top of that mat and the length running behind us. So we're going to be working with our forearms on the chair. And like I like to remind us all, we have all different chairs. So you sometimes have to customize the height of your props, or the shape of the prop, the size of the prop, so that it works for you. Remember, the props work for us, we don't work for them. So you might need to elevate the seat of your chair. We're going to be putting our forearms down. And if you don't have blocks, you can get them most anywhere, like Target and other places, online, Amazon. But you could also substitute books if you have big, thick books at home. Or you can elevate the chair some other way. Stack of blankets would work. What we're going to do is we're going to come into a lunge position. You're going to be stepping your left foot back and your right foot stays forward. And what we're trying to do is bend the right knee. This is kind of a lunging position here. And hopefully the intent here is that we're starting to lengthen out the calf muscles, and for you it might be the hamstrings, but just kind of focusing here on your left leg fully extending, meaning we're trying to remove the bend in the knee. We're reaching out through the heel. Meanwhile, your right hip joint is getting a really nice massage. The femur bone is kind of plunging deeply into your hip socket. And for some of us, a lot of us actually, there's resistance when we work with our hips. There's, well, I'll just leave it at resistance. So see if you can kind of dig a little deeper into that, investigate, and see if you can soften into your right hip space a little more rather than resist it. So just kind of melting into that deep hip flexion that you're inviting yourself into here. So you might have to look at the camera for this transition. We haven't done this before. We're going to be moving from here to side angle pose. So you don't have to change a lot, but you're going to pivot your left toes toward the left end of the mat, meaning your left foot will ground down completely. You're no longer on a lifted heel. And you're going to leave your right forearm down, and you'll take your left hand to your left hip. So we've done this pose before, but we've never entered it through this doorway. And you can learn a lot about poses when you approach them from different directions or take different kind of entry points to get into the pose. So I kind of like to start this pose already in a low position with my torso. So from time to time, not every time, but it just gives me a little more insight on kind of the depth of the pose and how much importance is in the legs of the pose. So hopefully you're here. I'm going to just peek at you guys while you're holding it and see if we have kind of arrived into it. Yep, that looks good. Good. Don't let your head dangle. So lift the crown of the head to align with the spine. So I like to say connect the dots from your tailbone to the top of the head. Yeah, remember the exit point. That looks great. Great, great. So from the side angle pose, now you're going to pivot back off of the left heel and come back to grounding your left forearm, come back to that lunging position. And then we're going to use our hands to the chair and we're going to help ourselves come up so we can swap the legs out. So you're going to be bringing the right foot back now. And we're attempting to have the knee right above the ankle. So again, you have to kind of work around your chair so that you have room to do that. We want to have our feet hip distance wide, meaning we're not on a balance beam. So make sure that you have clearance. Otherwise, your hips will be very kind of wobbly. We're going to start with both of our forearms down. And we're going to attempt to fully straighten the right leg. And we're also attempting to just soften into the left hip flexion that we're in, that deep kind of hip massage. And we're breathing. So we're essentially establishing the legs here before we come into that side angle pose. So without changing a whole lot, you're going to pivot onto the sole of the right foot. Your right toes will kind of turn out a little bit to the right end of the mat. You're going to stay heavy on your left forearm. You're going to peel that right forearm off the block and take hold of the hip. And then using the power of your legs, using the pressure of your left forearm, you're attempting to roll your torso from left to right. We're not worrying about the arm today. We're not going to stack the top arm. I really just want you to feel the base of this pose and how important it is. Okay, so gently begin to turn back to ground your right forearm. You're going to pivot back off of your right heel. And then you'll have to shift your weight forward enough you can step your feet underneath you and bring yourself up. And right where you're standing, come back to mountain pose. If it's helpful, pretend there's a chair behind you, you're reaching for it. You can extend out through your fingertips. You might even turn your palms to face forward, which helps roll the shoulders from front to back. And then once you feel you have those kind of wise actions, let your wrists come in line with your shoulders. Maybe the eyes close, maybe they don't. Plant your feet. Remember that mirror image of roots beneath your feet, not only directly below you, but all around you, like there's a canopy of roots broadly around your feet into the earth. Okay, so we're going to come back to working with our hands down. Similar work, but we won't be bending the knee now. So you may, if you elevated your chair seat, you probably can lose that now because we're not going to be on the forearms, we're going to be on the hands. So the right foot will stay forward, the left foot will stay back. And this time I want you to right away ground the left foot. So we're not on a lifted heel anymore like we did for that lunge. We're grounding the left foot, we're grounding the right foot. The left toes have a very slight turnout toward the left edge of your mat. Your hands are directly below the line of your shoulders. And we're going to start in Parsvottanasana. This is the intense side stretching pose. Your legs are completely straight as best you can. And from here, you're going to come forward and let your head hang freely. You might be able to completely come down onto forearms. You might just be bending your elbows. It kind of depends on your flexibility today and your body's needs. And I just want you to notice how that right hip likes to pull forward, the left hip likes to pull back. So in yoga, we're always trying to equalize imbalances in the body. We're trying to create more balance. So I want you to roll your right hip back and roll your left hip forward. Your hips should be square like headlights, even headlights. Keep your legs firm and straight. A good sign that your legs are firm is that your kneecaps are stabilized. They wouldn't wobble if you grabbed them. They would be securely anchored into the muscles that surround them. So similarly, like we moved from lunge to side angle, we're going to move from here to triangle. So come onto your hands again. Take a little more turn out with your left toes. Turn them farther to the left edge of your mat. And keep your right hand underneath your right shoulder. Pick up your left hand and take it to your left hip. And start to turn your chest to face the left. Remember, the crown of the head should be consistent with the tailbone. So we don't want to be dangling the crown of the head. Shoot a line of energy out through the top of your head so your spine can really express itself in this beautiful position you have. Couple deep breaths. If you want to stack the left arm above the right arm, that piece is available to you once the shoulders are stacked one above the other. So if your left shoulder is kind of falling toward the floor, it's not a good time to take the arm up. We want to wait until the shoulders are in line with each other, and then that arm will feel like it's a useful expression of the pose to take it up. If we do it prematurely, it just kind of makes the pose feel compromised. Okay, so coming back to your chair seats with your left hand, you're going to pivot back in with your left toes just slightly so that your hips are able to look at the chair evenly. And now we'll transition to revolving triangle. So we'll keep the left hand down, right hand to the hip. Pushing down into your feet, pushing down into the chair, start to turn your chest to the right. Lengthen from the tailbone out through the top of your head. Revolving triangle. And I'm going to look at you guys while you hold it. Keep moving with it. That looks great. That looks really great. A beautiful job. Good. And then gently start to turn back toward your chair. And then find your way to bringing the feet together. And then bringing yourself back upright. And just putting yourself back into mountain pose, which as we repeat it, the wise actions become more spontaneous. We don't have to give as many directions to the body. The body really remembers how to put itself back together here. And then just observing the breath, observing any sensation that follows what you just did. Good, bad, or otherwise, just noticing what you notice. Planting those roots out of your feet. Lifting a little taller through the top of the head. Letting the shoulders hang freely, nice and heavy. And then we'll see about side two. So this means the left foot under the chair and the right foot stepping back. So when we face the chair, we want to have those right toes almost facing the chair. To allow for this feature on the femur bone, we give a little turnout to the toes. Because if we had the toes straight forward, we have this greater trochanter on the femur. It's a feature of the femur bone that we need to allow for. So we take a little turnout with the right toes. You're going to start with your hands in line with your shoulders. And you're going to do the work of getting the hips more level. Cutting out that left outer hip back, cutting the outer right hip forward. And then meanwhile, straightening your legs as best you can. For some of us, we are prone to hyperextended knees. So you have to back out of it a little bit if you're hypermobile in your knees or hyperextended. But you want your legs straight. And then from there, you're going to bow toward your chair. And again, you might just bend elbows. You might be able to anchor your forearms down, but we want to tap into the weight of the head, really gently drawing toward the chair to encourage the spine to release here. All that sensation you feel in your legs, just imagine your breath is combing through tension in your legs. Just 3 more breaths here. When you're ready to breathe in, use that breath to help bring you back to your hands underneath your shoulders, your nice long arms. And then turn your right toes out slightly farther to point to the right to allow for the hips to become open in triangle pose. We're going to leave our left hand down. We're going to shift our weight more fully into the left hand to free the right hand to the right hip. And then we're going to start to gently turn the torso from the left side to the right. We're going to keep track of the crown of the head, being consistent with the tailbone, not letting the heavy head dangle now, lengthening. And then maybe that top arm stacks, maybe we keep the hand on the hip, continuing to work the shoulder above the other shoulder. Big breaths. This is a special container for your breath. All the poses are. They're just welcoming a nice big breath, letting it sweep through the body, letting it kind of move through some of those cobwebs that live in the body when we're not in this particular pose. Tensions accumulate. This is our chance to sweep out those little dusty corners. Come to the top of an inhale. And then slowly lengthen back to facing your chair. Evening out the weight across both hands, turning the toes back in. Those right toes slightly turn a little bit more toward the chair again to square your hips. Now to revolve the pose, you want to compact your hips toward midline. Keep your legs straight. Keep some weight on your right hand. Take hold of your left hip with your left hand. And then pushing down into this little tripod, you have your feet and your hand, pushing equally into those 3 points, turning your trunk now from the right to the left, turning your eyeballs to the left. You might feel this tendency to kind of poke out into your outer left hip. So draw the left hip toward the center of the body. Keep yourself compact. And again, maybe the arm goes up if you have a true shoulder above shoulder relationship. If not, keep working with your hand on your hip, keep rolling the shoulder back to kind of come above the right shoulder. I'm going to peek at you guys, hold it for a couple more breaths. Beautiful, really nice poses. Okay. Good, that's nice. Okay, come to the top of an inhale. And then turn back toward your chair. And from there, you're going to find your way to bringing both feet forward and come up. And then put yourself together in mountain pose. So when I used to do live classes, on occasion I would do a partner pose and mountain pose. So I'll describe it to you here because I think you can imagine it pretty well. And you can try it with somebody at home or somebody else at some other point if you know what you're doing. So just imagine that you're all lined up here in mountain pose as you are, because we've done this pose now several times today. And then someone is behind you and they're going to take their hands onto your shoulders and they're going to give as much pressure down as they can. And if you're in the right alignment in the pose, that pressure on your shoulders, it only reinforces the wise actions of the pose. It only makes it feel stronger. If you're in misalignment, that weight on your shoulders will make your spine feel kind of collapsed. And if you're in alignment, it actually makes your spine feel lighter and your spine resists against that pressure and it moves in the other direction toward the ceiling. So it's something you can imagine right now, but you can try at some point if you have a willing partner, just to give you a little bit of pressure down on your shoulders. ahead and as you're ready, let your eyes come open. And we're going to work with the higher part of the chair for just a couple more poses. And so we all have different chairs. And I like, for my own comfort and also for my proportions in my body, I like to put a blanket over the back of the chair. What we're trying to do is have the chair meet our hip line. So hopefully you don't have a chair that's a lot higher than your hip line. If you do, we'll get by with it. We'll just have to see how it goes. But if you're like me and your chair back is lower than your hip line, you're going to build it up with a couple blankets. That's usually the only choice, really. And then also, even if you have the right height, you might want it just for your comfort. You might want a blanket there just for your comfort, because, you know, whatever that material is, wood or metal, might not feel good if there's pressure against your flesh. So for that reason also, I like to take a blanket. So we're going to work with our pose Warrior 3. This week, my emphasis is on poses that have one aerial leg and one standing leg, and how we bring balance to those poses. So what we're going to do is fold over that chair back, and you're going to bring your hands down onto the chair seat. What we're using the chair for here, for our intents and purposes right now, is to have contact to our hips, because as soon as we raise one of our legs, you're going to sense that hip point grows lighter. So this is giving us feedback to have contact against the hips. What we're going to try to do is maintain an even sensation across the hip line with whatever touch you're feeling from your chair. It doesn't have to be pressure, it doesn't have to be huge, but just whatever touch you're feeling, you want to keep it equal from left to right. So we're going to keep our right leg underneath us. Right leg stays down. Your right toes should be in front of your heel. Sometimes when we go onto one leg, our foot turns out. So for a lot of us, we have to train the toes to stay in front of the heel, not to turn out. And now we're going to just start to raise the left leg. You don't have to raise it high, but you're just going to be starting to observe how your hips move and how they want to move. And you're going to try to keep them as level as you can. In other words, as evenly pressed against your chair as you can. Okay, reach out through your left heel. What we don't want to do is just dangle dead weight from our back. So the way we don't do that is we extend out through the left heel. We give that leg a line of energy so that it's not just dangling dead weight from the lower back. Go ahead and release it down now. And take a moment to pause. You might just kind of surrender your arms. You might let your head hang. I just want you to refresh yourself a little bit here before we do side two. Now you're going to come back to your hands on the chair seat, the edge of the chair seat. Make sure your left leg is a vertical leg. Make sure your left toes are right in front of your left heel. You're not turning out. Your hips are evenly pressurized against your blanket, your chair. And then you're going to start to raise your right leg. And again, it doesn't have to be really far from the floor. You might only have your toes an inch above the floor, but do reach out through your heel. Do try to keep weight rolling down into the right hip point. Don't let it roll to the ceiling. And then you're probably getting tired, so begin to take the leg back down, the foot back down. And again, you might just dangle here, do something refreshing for your body, do something that feels passive and surrendered. Take a couple breaths. So all these sets of poses have very similar pattern. We're going to be, you can watch the camera for a moment here. We're going to be moving back from Warrior 3, what you just did, but then we're going to transition to this half moon pose. So just take a peek at your camera. The difference is now that we are attempting to completely uproot the one hip and put it above the other. So it's a pose that we are turning on its side, just like we've been doing with all these poses today. We've been moving from facing down and forward to facing out. Okay, so start back on your two arms. Start back with both feet under you. The right foot should be in standing leg position, toes in front of heel. You're going to start by stretching your left leg back. And now you do want to encourage your weight to roll to the right hip. You do want to see if you can start to move your left hand to your left hip, and you want to eventually turn and face the left. This is a big pose. So sometimes there's some cramping involved. Sometimes there's some discomfort. So this is a pose that for me, I called it kind of snagged. I would get this large cramp. I still sometimes do. So just kind of honor how it feels to open up into this pose, and then see if you can transition back. And again, it does not have to be the complete pose. Just get as far as you can with it. So now instead of trying to have even hips, we're trying to completely stack one above the other. So come back to your refreshing, kind of forward bending, passive moment or two. And as you're ready, prepare your left leg directly underneath you. So your heel in line with your hip, toes in front of heel. You'll start with even pressure across your hips. You'll raise your right leg. Then you're going to start to roll your weight over to your left foot, your left arm. You're going to attempt to roll your torso from left to right. You might keep your right hand on the chair, the back of the chair. You might take your arm up, the full kind of expression of the pose here. This is called balancing half moon pose. And then you're going to help yourself turn your hips back, lower your leg, and step yourself back. And bring yourself up. Okay, so I want to just take a moment here to unmute you guys to see if there's any questions or feedback or anything. So how about you guys unmute yourself if you have a question or feedback? Linda's, do you have any feedback, Linda? I see you're unmuted.
I did unmute. No, it went well. And it was the first time I ever did it where I didn't have a wall nearby. And it was okay. Good.
So I find that for me, I have to have my chair height exactly right to support the hips. Otherwise, I don't feel as supported. So hopefully you had a good
I think so.
chair setup. Anybody else want to offer feedback or yeah, Jill?
Yeah, our chairs just weren't really conducive for it. So
Okay, well, let me see your chairs. Yeah, they hit you kind of high, right?
Really high. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So folding chairs, they're seriously like $5 at Walmart or Target, but those might be better for the yoga practice.
Okay.
If you want to grab some at some point.
Okay.
Yeah, because the higher we can't do anything about, but if they're low, we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else?
Still
Sure.
too. It's
Same.
yeah, but I have a folding chair, but it's still a little high for me.
And how tall are you, Shar, if you don't mind?
About 4'11".
Okay, so they do make smaller folding
Short
chairs
ones?
too. Yeah.
Oh, maybe I
So,
need a little.
there's hope.
I don't shrink anymore.
Yeah, well, the yoga will help with
No,
that.
but it felt pretty good, but to relax and put your arms down, I have to stand on my toes.
Okay, yeah, because you're getting hit at the wrong point there. So that's important to have the right chair for your body. Okay, well, thank you. Anybody else?
I made a complete mess of it, but it was okay.
Can you share what part was messy or?
The high chair and, you know, lifting my leg. I've got some artificial joints that didn't want to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a big pose, so I'm sure there were some barriers there. But again, yeah, just a simple folding chair from like Walmart, I know has them. And yeah, you might want to invest in it if you're going to keep up with this. I mean, not to say we can't use what we have at home, but it might just you might have a more positive experience with it. So. All right, we're going to start to wind down now. Thanks for your feedback. And I'm going to mute us just so we don't have background noise, but always feel free to wave at me or get my attention. And we're going to now be working with, if you do have a second chair, it's not essential, but if you do have it, I find it's really very soothing to have a second chair. For what we're about to do, it's not essential though. If you do have a second chair, you can just put it right in front of you with the seat of it facing you. And you might include the surface of the chair just having a blanket or something soft so you're not resting on metal again or wood. What we're trying to do with that second chair is get the head to come down. Meanwhile, we're going to elevate our feet. So we're going to, and this is also not essential, but again, blocks are everywhere. You can buy them online, in stores, and we use them quite a bit. So if you don't have blocks, we can use big books like dictionary books or encyclopedias. But you do want to elevate your feet, and you want to have a wider position with the knees, so they're wider than your hips. You can always play with versions of height. So, if you know you're quite mobile, you might do a taller setting for your blocks. But we're going to do a forward bend from here. So if you have that second chair, you're going to just use it, and you can add things to it again so the height is correct. What we're attempting to do is get the head down. I'm showing it without because I don't want to block your view of me, and I also don't have my second chair available at the moment. So I'm just going to show you without, but you can imagine the chair in front of me. And if it was too far away to get to that seat of the chair, I would put something there like blankets or blocks or a bolster. If you own a bolster, you can use your arms as props to rest your head. So if you don't have that second chair, you're just going to hang freely. And if you have to kind of allow space in the center body, like Linda, you might just keep your arms on your thighs and just let your head bow. But when you elevate the feet, you get a little bit of a deeper massage in the hip joints. So you kind of have to Goldilocks it, meaning you have to not too hot, not too cold. We want to have that perfect experience. So finding your way to either your head just kind of dangling, your head is supported. And one thing I want to mention here is when your feet are wide, your toes are turned out slightly. They're like, 15 to 45 degree turnout, but you're not letting your knees fall out. So you have to bring a little resistance to squeezing the knees toward each other. Or another way to think about this is bringing weight back to your inner feet. So in other words, we're not just trying to roll out to the small toe and uproot the insteps of the feet or the ball mounds of heel. So try to keep some weight to the inner feet. Try to keep your knees somewhat magnetized toward each other. And we'll just stay about another half a minute here. And now to get the true kind of rest and digest experience for the nervous system, we're going to first bring ourselves up slowly, but then we're going to join the knees and join the feet so that we have the thighs pressing either on our arms against our chest or pressing directly against our chest. But this helps put us into that rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system. You're still going to fold forward. You can still modify however you need to. We won't use a second chair for this one. So it was just for that last pose, that previous pose for the second chair. We'll just give ourselves another half a minute here. And go ahead and use your hands against your thighs. Bring yourself up with strong stomach muscles. So we don't want to roll ourselves up because sometimes that can really be hard on the spine. So really corset the stomach muscles to support the spine coming back up. And now before we sit quietly, I just want to take care of the neck a little bit and the shoulders. So just come back to a comfortable seated position. Feel free to use the back of the chair now for support. And we're just going to drop the chin down toward the chest, but you're also kind of keeping your chest lifted and toward the chin. So it's kind of mutual, the chest and chin finding each other. And you're just going to softly bring one ear to one shoulder, toward one shoulder. And then exhale, chin back to center, back to chest. Inhale the head in the other direction. Exhale, center. Inhale. Exhale is always going to take you back to center. Inhale is going to help you move to the side. And just like anything else, if you find you have kind of zoomed in on some tension in your body that you're really interested in, just feel free to always hang out there and breathe. You don't have to. I like to say we're not a synchronized yoga team. We are individuals having our own experience. So if you feel like you're working on something, you might just keep your head to one side and breathe. And the next time you're centered, you can lift your head. We're going to roll the shoulders and you're going to just squeeze them up to your ears first, and then you're going to push them forward. Kind of think about a square shape here. Pull them down and press them back, and do a square a couple more times. So straight up to the ears, forward, down, back, and then start to kind of shave off those edges of your square. So you're making more of a circular shape, more of a smooth movement pattern. You're not stopping anymore. It's going to be fluid. And you're just making as big of a circle as you can. It might not be a perfect circle. It might be kind of an ellipse or something else. But notice if your shoulders move in sync, or if you have kind of one moving before the other. In yoga, there's a belief that the weaker parts of the body move quicker. So maybe you have one shoulder that's working, kind of advancing in front of the other one. That might be a sign that there's a little bit more weakness on that side. So again, just always kind of noticing as much as you can. There's really no wrong answers, just becoming very inquisitive into your body. And the next time your shoulders are forward and down, we'll go back to roughing out a square, but we're going to move in the opposite direction. So lift straight up to the ears, push back, pull down, press forward, and do a couple more squares first, just kind of mapping out as rough of a perimeter as you can. Down, forward, and then you might start to take away those little edges and make more of a fluid, circular movement pattern. Go slow enough that you're moving at the speed of presence. I think I made this up, but maybe I didn't. But moving at the speed of presence means you're able to stay focused on what you're doing as you're doing it. Keeping the mind occupied, which is really the work that we do in yoga. And again, just noticing, there might be hot spots, there might be more neutral zones, there might be really easy mobile spots. So just kind of notice all of it. You might notice there's a difference between moving in this direction versus the previous direction. And the next time you are aligning your shoulders above your hips and your shoulders have released down, you can leave yourself there and just kind of slide back against the chair. And be as passive as you can. So your hands might kind of come closer to your groins. Your elbows should be as best they can under the shoulders. Your skull again is right floating above the spine. And you're resting on your sitting bones, but now also we have support to the back body. We shouldn't be tipping our chin down or up. It's just simply level with the floor. Go ahead and unhinge your jaw. So if you have like a fixed set jaw, try to relax the lower jaw. Sometimes swallowing can help us do that if we can't just command ourselves to release our jaws. Sometimes swallowing once can help. Just like you began this class, just come back to that really undivided attention. Turn the attention inward. Notice as much as you can. Notice where you're still a little bit tight, tense, resistant, contracted, effortful. Keeping your soft gaze pointed down away from your brain. Just observing how the breath fills and empties from the body on its own without any guidance from your conscious brain. As we use the body in yoga, we bring space into the physical body, and it really plays out as space opening up between our thought waves. And it's been said that we live in the spaces between our thoughts, that our true selves are really in the spaces between all that noise. So just noticing for this last minute, if you can just kind of dwell in those little quiet, empty spaces. Let's welcome ourselves out of the pose just with a deeper breath. Maybe a little movement to your feet, your hands. Maybe the knees and elbows want to move. And you can just slide forward for a moment and bring your hands together in front of your heart. Sit up tall. Taking just a moment to acknowledge how you feel. Taking a moment to find a sense of gratitude. Let's take a deep breath in through the nose. Let it go. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. All right. Nice work today. It was a little bit of a more challenging content, so I'm really impressed with what I saw today. But always reach out with your feedback and your comments, because that really helps me to guide us along here. So you guys, I'll see you soon. Thanks.